All right, you ready for chapter 11? This one is called Jamoka Jack. And if you can see, this one has a picture at the beginning. Looks like a mining town. You've got a dog wandering around. You've got, here it would be Jack and Praiseworthy walking into town. You got somebody over here doing something. I don't know. We'll see. All right. The stagecoach climbed as if it were part mountain goat. It lurched, it halted, it buckled, it leaped, it clung. At times, there was a sheer drop to one side of the trail, and far below, the pine trees looked to Jack like sharp green lances, waiting to skewer them if they even slipped. He only looked once in a while. They were almost at the diggings, he told himself. He'd be telling himself that for days. But at last, the stagecoach arrived, bringing a cloud of summer dust all the way from Sacramento City. "Hangtown, gents!" called the driver, snapping with a final crack of his whip. "Looks mighty quiet today. Don't see nobody standing under a pine limb with his boots off the ground." That means a hanging. A dog greeted them at the end of the street and barked them all the way up to the Empire Hotel. The passengers got out. There was road dust in Jack's eyebrows, in his ears, and even down his neck. Now they had arrived, he had gold fever so bad that he didn't see how he could wait another 5 minutes to get his shovel into the ground. Hangtown, yes! Everywhere he looked, there was men in jackboots and colored shirts. There wasn't a woman to be seen. The miners were coming and going, or standing and talking, or sitting and whittling. Blue freight wagons were being unloaded. Blindfolded mules were being loaded up, and the store shacks on both sides of the street were raised up on wood pilings, like little short legs, and looked as if they had just walked into town. Jack shouldered his shovel, and Praiseworthy shouldered his pick. On the roof of the stagecoach, the driver was throwing down trunks and hand luggage. "What's the best hotel in town?" asked Praiseworthy. "The Empire," said the driver. "What's the worst?" squinted Cut-Eye Higgins. "The Empire," said the driver. Praiseworthy glanced at Jack. "Well, I guess my guess is there's only one hotel in town then, the Empire." It was exactly 1 hour and 5 minutes before Jack saw the diggings. First, Praiseworthy registered them at the hotel. They washed up, and immediately Praiseworthy wrote a letter to Dr. Buckbee advising him that Cut-Eye Higgins was in Hangtown, but that the map had fallen into the hands of a gang of highwaymen. "Can we go now? Come on, can we go?" Jack said, fidgeting. He had polished his horn spoon so much that he could see his nose in it. "Go where?" "The diggings," said Jack. "Oh, the diggings. Well, they'll still be there after lunch, Master Jack." Praiseworthy's patience was a marvel and an exasperation. They had come more than 15,000 miles now, and they had to stop and eat? A month even. He wondered if, Jack didn't care if they passed up eating for a week, a month even. He wondered if they could ever grow up to be as easygoing as Praiseworthy. Excuse me. But once they sat down at the hotel restaurant, Jack discovered that he was so hungry that he ordered bear steak. It was the only item on the menu, and with sow belly beans, and Jack figured that he was starving, that he would order that. "You and the boy, you want bread to go with your grub?" asked the waiter. He was a big fellow in floppy boots. "Why not?" said Praiseworthy. "Well, it's $1 a slice," he said. The butler slowly arched an eyebrow. "You want it with butter? It's $2, he said. Praiseworthy peered at Jack and then smiled. "Hang the cost, sir. We're celebrating our arrival at the diggings. Bread and butter, if you please." The bear steak was greasy and stringy and something not to write home about. Jack forced it down anyways. After they left the restaurant, Praiseworthy bought a pair of buckskin pouches at the general merchandise store and emptied the gold dust from his glove into one of them. The index finger was springing a leak. Jack liked the new leather smell of the pouch. He tucked it under his belt next to his horn spoon and was beginning to feel like a real miner. Then, with the tin basins under their arms and the pick and shovel across their shoulders, they set out for the diggings. The day was hot and sweaty, and when they reached the running water, they saw the miners crouched everywhere along the banks. They were washing gold out of the dirt in everything from wooden bowls to frying pans. "Anybody digging here?" asked Praiseworthy when they came to a bare spot. "Sure is," said the answer. "That there's Buffalo John's claim." The butler and the boy moved on upstream. Here and there, miners were shoveling dirt into long wooden troughs, set into running water to catch the golden flakes. "Anybody digging here?" asked Praiseworthy. "Yup," came the answer. "That's Jimmy from town's claim." On and on they went, looking for a place to dig. They passed miners in blue shirts and red shirts and check shirts, and earth and shovels flew. Weathered tents were staked to hillsides, and the smell of boiling coffee drifted through the air. After they had walked a mile and a half, Jack began to think that they would never find a piece of ground that wasn't spoken for. But suddenly a pistol shot cracked up in the mountain air. Praiseworthy's wash basin rang like a bell and leapt from his arm and went clattering away. "You there!" yelled a voice from below. Praiseworthy turned. His eyes narrowed slowly. "Are you talking to me, sir?" he said. "Talking and shooting? What you doing with your my washpan under your arm?" Jack stared at the man. He had a thick, tangled beard, and his ears were bent over with the weight of a slouched hat. "Needless to say, you're mistaken," said Praiseworthy. "Until this very moment, I've had very good fortune never to set my eyes on your washpan, my sir." "Well, we don't take kindly to thievery in these parts," growled the miner. Stepping forward, "A man steals round here, we're going to lop off his ears. That's miner's law for you." "Do you have any laws against shooting at strangers?" "Nope." Jack couldn't imagine Praiseworthy with his ears lopped off. He took a grip on the handle of his shovel as the miner came even closer. His heart was beating faster, and he waited for a signal from Praiseworthy. So here's part of the picture on this page. You got people digging, and they've got their picks going into the dirt. This is a long tom that they're washing the gold flakes in, this long tom, into the river. The other side of this is got people digging and again washing in the river, picks, shovels. Here's Jack and Praiseworthy right here. The miner belted his pistol and picked up his washpan. He crimped an eye and he looked over at them. "It's mine, all right," he said. "You're either nearsighted or you're a scoundrel," said Praiseworthy. Jack was ready for a fight, if not for their lives, at least for Praiseworthy's ears. Just then, a flash of tin in the sunlight from a pile of wet rocks caught Jack's eye. He dropped his shovel and he went for it. "Is this your pan, mister?" said Jack. The miner's bushy eyebrows shot up like birds taking wing. "Oh, is that it? That's it, ain't it?" And he laughed as if the joke were on him. "I'd forget my boots if I didn't have them on my feet," he said. Praiseworthy peered at the man. Apparently shooting at strangers by mistake didn't amount to anything here in the diggings. The miner hardly gave it another thought. "How about a cup of Jamoka?" "Jamoka?" said Praiseworthy. "Coffee. I got a pot working on the fire. Where are you from, strangers? Pitch Pine Billy Pierce, they call me, and I'd be rightly pleased if you did the same. Shucks, looks like I wore a hole plumb through your washpan. Good shooting, though, wasn't it?" Praiseworthy put his finger right through the hole of the washpan. It was now useless. "Perfect for shooting, sir." "No hard feelings," said Pitch Pine Billy. "I can show you guys how to wash gold, then skin a cat. Let's get that coffee and put some hair on that boy's chest. He your son?" Jack looked at Praiseworthy. "My son?" said the butler. He started to explain, but the miner didn't leave a long enough pause. "Mississippi McFinn and his 2 boys are with him. I hear they just struck it rich over on Poverty Hill. And then there's that Peterman boy. He and his pa, they've been trying their luck at Swellhead Diggins. What's your name, boy?" "Jack." "You look powerfully clean for a young'un. It don't seem natural somehow. Why, your ears even shine like newly minted gold pieces." Jack felt his face redden as he glanced at Praiseworthy. I'm not going to wash for a week, he thought, or a month, or maybe until we even get back to Boston, he thought. There was an air of hospitality in the miner that pleased Praiseworthy, and he forgave him for the hole in his washpan. "Sir, a cup of coffee would taste just fine right now." Pitch Pine Billy led them to where there was a weathered canvas tent, and he pitched along the slope, and the coffee pot was boiling there merrily. He filled 3 tin cans, black as paint, it looked to Jack. He had never tasted coffee in his life. Aunt Arabella would be furious with him for drinking coffee. He looked at Praiseworthy, and Praiseworthy gave him a little nod, as if to make up for having Jack wash his ears back at the hotel. The tin cans were so hot that they felt as if they had just been forged in the fire. Jack sat on a rock and let his brew cool. Although Praiseworthy's coat and bowler hat had fallen by the wayside, he clung to the black umbrella for the last badge of his calling. A butler, mused Pitchpine Billy. He drank his coffee right down, steam and all. You any relative to Hemp Butler over in Muletown? The name is Praiseworthy, not Butler, sir. I am a butler. The miner crimped his eye. You don't say, he said. Well, he calls himself Butler, old Hemp does. Never knowed his name to be Praiseworthy, though. But I always figured him for the shifty type. How about 10-Spot Butler over there in Poker Flat? He your folks, too? There seemed to be no point in trying to make himself clear, and Praiseworthy just let it go. Tell me, Mr. Pierce. Oh, no, you call me Pitchpine Billy. How do we stake a claim? Asked Praiseworthy. Easy. You find yourself a piece of real estate nobody's working on and ground 4 pegs into the corners. You put tin cans on them so folks can see. Rags will do too. If you got yourself a legal claim, that's miner's law. As long as you work it at least 1 day a month, that claim is yours. He laughed and stroked his beard. Of course, the other 30 days, you got to stand around shooting off squatters, though. And claim jumpers. He refilled his tin can. Why, there are places along the river where claims are only 4 foot square, and the boy is digging out a fortune back to back. Jack finally picked up his tin can. The steam alone was like a dragon's breath. Now he was almost sorry that Praiseworthy had given him the nod to drink it. At the first taste, the coffee bit his tongue. It was so bitter. Drink up, Jack. Jamoka Jack. That's what we're going to call you. A man ain't really accepted around here until he's got himself a nickname. Best coffee I ever had, said Jack hoarsely. Plenty more in the pot for you. I ground a few acorns in for flavor, too. Jack winced inwardly. Jamoka Jack. The name pleased him to have, but he wasn't sure that he could win that name. The coffee stung and burned and tasted poisonous. He forced down another mouthful of it. He was afraid that the miner would take back the name if he didn't drain the can. He tried another swig, but it just wouldn't go down. Praiseworthy, catching Jack's distress out of the corner of his eye, shifted his position. The tip of his umbrella jiggling Jack's elbow, and the tin can jumped. The coffee spilled. It's no account, said Pitchpine Billy. He lifted the pot, and he refilled Jack's tin. We don't stand on table manners around here. Jack gulped and stared at the fresh, steaming black potion of coffee. He had to begin all over again. Praiseworthy gave him a compassionate glance. He considered it his duty to look out for Jack, but now he only made matters worse. Let me show you how to wash out gold without any water, Pitchpine Billy said. Take your horn spoon, boy, and scrape me some dirt in the crack in the rock. It places like the spangles like to hide there, if they're tiny. Jack was glad to put his coffee down to cool. He slipped the horn spoon out of his belt and turned eagerly to the crack in the rocks. Just a handful, boy. Jack scraped away, gathering up the river sand, bit by bits with dead pine needles. The horn spoon worked just fine. It got a crack. It got in its cracks. He filled the miner's outstretched hand, and he sat on his heels to watch. Now this is a trick, said Pitchpine Billy. So here's Pitchpine Billy. He's got the dirt in his hand. He's dropping it from hand to hand, and he's blowing through as he's dropping the dirt from hand to hand. This is a trick we Sonorans use, Billy said. They come from the Sonora down in Mexico way. Water must be scarcer than gold around there. We call this dry washing. He poured a little dirt from the stream from his fist to fist, like sand in an hourglass, while at the same time blowing on it. Sand and pine needles scattered under the force of his breath. He poured again from hand to hand, and each time the handful of dirt grew smaller and smaller. Grain for grain, gold is 8 times heavier than sand. If you just blow right, the spangles fall and the lighter stuff goes flying. Jack bent closer. Finally, Pitchpine Billy had nothing left to blow. He held out his rough palm in his hand and laughed. Boy, you struck it rich already. Look here. And resting in his hand were 2 gleaming pinheads of gold. But to Jack, they looked as large as jewels. Put 'em in your pouch, boy, said Pitchpine Billy. Easy, now don't knock over your coffee again. Thank you, sir, Jack smiled, whipping out his brand new buckskin pouch. But they're yours from your land. The miner grinned. Anything that small, I throw back in. You and your pa, you could squat on my claim if you'd like. But Praiseworthy's not. There's more yellow underfoot than I can dig out, so I'd be obliged to have you help us clear it away. You got any idea how to work a tin pan of yours, boy? Mr. Quartz Jackson. You old friend, Quartz Jackson. Why didn't you say so that you're friends with him? Now you have to stay for dinner, you hear? We're going to have some sow belly and beans. I don't want to take no for an answer. Now looky here. You go get your boots wet and I'll teach you how to pan. Bring your coffee with you too, Jamoka Jack. Jack exchanged a glance with Praiseworthy. Sow belly and beans? We'd be delighted to join you for dinner, Praiseworthy said, since Pitchpine Billy had left them no choice, really. They moved to the edge of the stream and Jack took a swallow of his coffee. The miner pulled a few weeds and threw them in the pan. Jack got down another mouthful of coffee. Well, around running water, explained Pitchpine Billy, gold has a way of getting tangled up into the roots of weeds and grass. He dipped water in the pan and washed the roots clean. He added more dirt until the wash basin was better than half full. Then he began to pan, using the same circular motion that Quartz Jackson had showed them. You get rid of the rocks, you get rid of the slickens, and little by little... Slickens? Said Jack. Mud with gold worked out of it. Keep the pan working and dipping and working and dipping until the spangles reach the bottom. Fish out of rocks. That's the plan. You see how I'm letting them slickens spill over the edge of the pan? It takes practice, boy. At first, you'll lose more color over the side than you'll save at the bottom, but you'll get the hang of it. Ain't you drinking your coffee, boy? Why, looky there. We struck it rich again. Let me have your pouch. Jack took 2 hard swallows of coffee. Then he pulled off his shoes, rolled up his trousers, and tried his hand at the gold pan. The mountain water was icy, but he hardly noticed it first. He hunted grass and weeds, and 5 minutes later, he could no longer even feel his feet. You standing in melted snow off those highest peaks, said Pitchpine Billy, chuckling. Wash out the color. And you could buy yourself some boots. Then he turned to Praiseworthy. You ain't exactly dressed for prospecting yourself. You and your boy will be needing a tent and a mountain canary. I'm going to show you this as I'm reading. So, there we go. And a mountain canary. A mountain canary, said Praiseworthy. A mule, a burro, one that goes ee-aw, ee-aw. Now, you got a fine singing voice, don't he? Well, what you use that umbrella for, said Pitchpine Billy. It's a matter of habit, said Praiseworthy. Well, it ain't going to rain around here for some time, but seeing how I punctured your gold pan, I don't see any reason why your umbrella just won't work as well. Let me show you how to do it. But, said Praiseworthy, but Pitchpine Billy had lifted it off Praiseworthy's arm and opened that umbrella wide. He stuck it in the ground upside down. If you don't mind, sir, said Praiseworthy with a flash of impatience, I happen to treasure that. Oh, yes, sir, the miner was saying. It ought to work fine, just fine. Then he began shoveling dirt into the open umbrella. Praiseworthy watched with a kind of quiet horror. He'd carried that black umbrella for years, and now it was being ruined right before his eyes. Oh, thank you, sir, began Praiseworthy. But by then, Pitchpine Billy had lifted the dirt-filled umbrella into the water and now was dunking it up and down, up and down. He began to twirl the handle. He dunked and twirled and dunked and twirled. Why, I've panned gold in a pocket handkerchief, the miner said. The dirt dissolves and washes right through and leaves the spangles behind. Jack, meanwhile, was working the slickens out of his pan. And he'd stepped out of the water to warm his feet up and take another sip of coffee, and then he returned. He worked 2 pans of dirt without finding a speck of color. But then he didn't have the hang of it, really. He was losing gold with the slickens, but he stayed with it and his feet even turned blue. Finally, Pitchpine Billy was no longer plunging the umbrella, but working with deft, gentle washing movements. He fingered out the rocks, and then another movement turned the umbrella to Praiseworthy. Best gold pan in the river, said Pitchpine. He just grinned. I might have to buy myself one, too. The mud was gone, and in its place, along the black fabric of the umbrella, lay bright dusting of golden spangles. Praiseworthy crimped an eye and smiled at the hospitable miner. I think we can get a hang of it, sir, he said. He removed his shoes, rolled up his trousers, and set to work. All through the afternoon, Jack could be seen panning and taking a sip of cold coffee, and Praiseworthy cut an elegant figure, plunging his muddy umbrella into that stream. Finally, Jack reached the bottom of the tin can, and that was that. "Yes, sir, first-rate coffee, Pitchpine Billy," he said to him. "First rate." "Oh, I'm glad you liked it, boy," said Pitchpine Billy. "Let me just go over there and fill it up for you again, Jamoka Jack." And that is the end of chapter 11. That was a long one. Hope you enjoyed it. They're finally in the diggings, finally trying to make their fortune. Here we go. It gets better even from here. See you later. Miss you guys. Bye.